And now we have a truly live panel, which I think is a big achievement in these days of COVID. And so I'm happy to welcome you to what promises to be a really down-to-earth discussion of one of the main challenges that Europe has faced in recent years and continues to face. That is, those challenges posed by migration and the influx of people who are driven from their homes under whatever circumstances into other places, perhaps unwilling or reluctant to accept them. So I have a super panel of practitioners, as it were, but I will start with Ambassador Štefánek, who is following up on the contribution of the Council of Europe to this segment. And I would love to give you the floor so that you can outline how you see the situation.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I would like to thank the Democracy and Culture Foundation for the invitation and for this opportunity to address the very topical issue of the migration and human rights. It's not only the topic of this panel, but it's also the core of my mandate to address the human rights of migrants or refugees or people on the move. There are different expressions for different groups. Quite often we are forgetting that migrants are, first of all, human rights beings and human beings with the entitled to enjoy their respective rights. Sometimes I see in the news just the numbers when we speak about their relocation or resettlement, but after every number, behind every number, there is a destiny, there is a human being with its journey from the country of origin until the country of destination. Also, the migrants and the whole issue of migration has become a political one, has become politicized. I don't necessarily like this fact, but we have to take as a reality and take as a reality that human rights are to some extent political, and that the issue of the migration has been politicized throughout Europe, and that creates another layer from political discourse. This sometimes transforms or goes down to the xenophobic or racist or hate speech discourses. I often see them as the comments concerning the various articles in the media when addressing the migration. The challenges, of course, the main challenge started in 2015, 2016 when migrants or people were moving to Europe en masse. I don't think that we are in a situation of crisis at present. We are more in a situation which has been a challenge for us, but we are not speaking these days about the millions, but rather about hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of people coming to Europe. But another issue is that the migrants and refugees are easy to blame because they are voiceless. There is no one to support them. There is no one to defend them. No state entity or anything, any structure like that. So here there is a role of international community organizations as the UNHCR, IOM, Council of Europe, Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to step in and to defend the rights of migrants. We have been focusing in the Council of Europe on vulnerable groups, especially children. We had in the years 2017-2019 the action plan concerning migrant and refugee children. We are now in elaboration of a new action plan which is not loose to focus on children. It will be included, but we will have to go for more broader context of the vulnerable groups, including migrant women, pregnant women, elderly, victims of trafficking in human beings or victims of violence. I would like to underline the issue of education, which is very important for all, of course, all parts of the society, but in particular for migrants and refugees. integration, inclusion, intercultural integration, those are also the issues where we would like to focus in our future work. Of course, we have noticed last week on 21st September, the European Commission launched or presented a new pact on migration. I had a statement with our partners from the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and we are hoping that, and we are sure that the pact will live up to the European values, implicitly human rights. One of my messages would be also for a workshop which will follow our discussion, that the migration management can be human rights compliant, can be human rights friendly. How this is to be achieved? By preparation and training, quality decision making, and no tolerance for inhuman or violent treatment. Monitoring is very important also in this case, and I'm happy to see that the new EU Pact, the new draft of the EU Pact on Migration and Asylum includes and comprises also monitoring of various decisions at various stages. We are basing our work on the convention, European Convention on Human Rights, which is 70 years old, and as it was mentioned by the Secretary General just minutes ago, there are different articles with different issues, and I would mention Article 2, right to life, Article 3, which is prohibiting the torture, inhuman or degrading treatment. The convention, of course, is 70 years old.
If I could ask you to move slowly towards.
Thank you. And sorry for being so long. But it has been developed very much through the jurisprudence adjudication of the European Court of Human Rights. Thank you.
It's terrible to have to cut any discussion short on this topic, but I want to make sure everybody has their say. And I'll turn now with that object in mind to Chaker Khazaal, who I think has completed what ought to have been a 2-hour journey in about 25 hours of different hopping between planes. But thank you so much for making the effort to come here. You can tell your story. You have 5 minutes.
So first, thank you to the Athens Democracy Forum for having us today at a time where we really need to speak about displacement and speak about what is it like to be a refugee and the atmosphere that is surrounding, the rhetoric that's surrounding displacement. I was born a Palestinian refugee in Lebanon, and let me tell you one thing, no one is born wanting to be a refugee. And that fundamental thought of us being born into displacement or having to face something that leads to displacement, you would think it would soften some hearts around the world today. We're seeing the opposite in a lot of instances. We're seeing a rhetoric of fear from refugees. We're seeing a rhetoric of not accepting the other in so many ways. And for that, it means a lot for a refugee to look at it and say, how can we make this, a better world, a world that includes us, a world that gives us opportunity. And I always like to go back, to the personal experience of growing up in a refugee camp. It was only when Canada gave me a chance in life that I managed to do something out of my life. So those experiences, how much are we highlighting them in the media? And why are we allowing even some leaders to be negative about a group of people that we have become over 50 million people today? Should we penalize someone for saying a negative thing about refugees? Well, maybe. It took us so long for us to penalize people to be saying the N-word or the F-word. So will we one day be penalizing the R-word? Will we be even talking to the media? And today we have a lot of members of the media with us. What kind of stories do we really so much in need today to be highlighting should be our focus when we have to deal with refugees? Just a few weeks ago, I was in Beirut during the Beirut blast. Few weeks after, I'm seeing friends of mine getting on boats, wanting to leave. This just made me realize one thing, that in order for us to be tackling the refugee crisis, we need to tackle actually what is leading for this refugee crisis to happen. And sadly, we're seeing more people displaced. We're seeing more wars. We're seeing a lot of people that the other day I was just watching on the news and I saw a kid on a boat. This shouldn't be allowed in 2020. And on top of that, then we're seeing that rhetoric of fear. So here we have two things. We have to go back to the root of what is displacing people. If I take the Lebanon example today, it's not too late. And this is a message today to the entire world. We just saw 2 boats leave the Lebanese shores heading to Cyprus when one of the boats sank. Are we ready to take another refugee crisis? Of course not. So this is the time now to be looking at the roots of refugee crises that are emerging. Because just in no time, we saw what the Syrian war led to. So I want to sum this topic up by saying that the media, we have a huge role. And I really hope one day, as a former refugee and as a Canadian citizen today, I really hope that when I see a president or a prime minister or whoever it is saying the R word in a negative way, that we can actually go back to them and hold them accountable. Because if we don't act with humanity and kindness first, like so many countries and so many people have warmly taken refugees and giving them those tools and giving them that other chance in life. And I always end this discussion by saying, let's really remember that at some point our ancestors, our prophets of God, everyone had to move from one place to another for safety. So the refugee DNA is in us. It's not something foreign. It's not something to fear. It's something that we need to actually tackle, and we need to hold accountable anyone who will come against the humanity in such a context. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for that timely reminder that we also must weigh words. Everything is in language. It also illustrated very well the point made earlier that there's no single cause for the refugee and growing anti-refugee sentiment, and there's no single fix either. 2 people who are trying to fix something are here with us in Athens, in their, I believe, native city. I'd like to turn to Sofia Kouvelaki first. She runs the Home Project here in in Greece. And also then to speak with Antigone Lyberaki, who runs SolidarityNow here in Greece. And we really feel so fortunate for this one panel to have all live participation. So please give us some of your insights in, of course, 5 minutes. And then we'll have time for maybe a couple of questions at the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. A big thank you to the Athens Democracy Forum, and I'm very happy that it happens under the sponsorship of the Council of Europe, because what we are trying to do here in Athens at the Home Project, we are trying to provide a solution to the significant gap that exists in terms of child protection for lone refugee children in Europe. And I was very happy to hear Ambassador Štefánek saying that you are indeed considering children as part of your new action plan. We think that there should be a specific action plan for children, and especially for lone refugee children. And I'm going to take up the point that Chaker mentioned about the DNA of human nature, which is to move and to migrate. Human nature, we are a migratory species. So one could only wonder, how is it possible in Greece, at the entrance of Europe, to have children that are alone? At the moment, there are more than 4,700 unaccompanied refugee children in Greece, of which 2,600 are outside of protection, meaning in detention, in camps. Fortunately, after the big fire in Moria, all children were transferred from the islands, which is a very positive first step. But what one could only wonder, why did we have to wait until these children were almost burnt alive to do that? So we think it's of utmost urgency to include these children in an official system of protection. And that's what we try to do at the Home Project. We try to offer a holistic network of child protection services in 11 shelters for 220 children in Athens, from newly born babies to 18 years old. The ultimate aim is integration, whether these children will reunify with their parents in Europe, or maybe they will stay here and apply for asylum. What we try to show is that only through an individualized approach, through a system of child protection, can we protect these children. It's not enough to only put them in hotels or short-term accommodation. They really need a child protection approach, and we need to institutionalize this approach, meaning that it has to come within European institutions, applying an approach that is not only top-down, it's also bottom-up. It really takes into consideration the real needs on the ground. And we should really stop talking about refugee children. These are children. And we need to show that. We need to integrate these values into action. And we've seen that it's happening. For the past 4 years, we have supported more than 520 children, and many of them are now active and productive citizens because they have received support, because they have received all the services that are necessary. These children need mental health support, social support, legal support, and also education. Education is key to transforming their lives. I'm very happy to just close this with a very important success story for us. We had a child that is now studying at Sciences Po, Paris, and an accompanied refugee child that arrived here all alone after having passed a terrible journey. And through education, he's now in one of the most successful universities in Europe. So what we want to say that it is possible, but we need the support of
and that is a heartening example, and I think we've seen other such ones in Europe, and it's really important for the media to highlight this. Can I turn to you now so that we round out this live round? And please remember to send us questions if you have questions on this all-important subject of migration and refugees.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It's a great pleasure to talk about human rights and refugees. The truth of the matter is that human rights do not stop at the gate. They should be respected and upheld, not only at the point of reception, but also at the long period following reception, that is, during integration. However, the sad story is that in Greece, as elsewhere in Europe, the point of reception and conditions of first reception capture all the attention. The first reception process somehow takes all the space in the public imagery. It triggers very strong feelings, very often negative, and it somehow leaves no space for the really crucial matter, which is how to integrate and live together and offer life chances. So the thesis I'm going to propose today is that based on our experience in SolidarityNow, the battle for human rights can be fought and won only in relation to integration. And why is this so? It is so because by focusing exclusively on reception, we somehow do not take into account the refugee point of view, the person's, the individual point of view, by making him or her just somebody who waits in a limbo situation while others fight the good fights for her or his legal status. We somehow create a situation where we drill holes in their biographies and they become voiceless and we rob them of their agency. Mm-hmm. It is very important to go back and see how we can offer a meaningful objective, a purpose for these people's lives while we give the battle for their legal status.
If I could ask you to wrap up very quickly.
I'm going to wrap up very quickly saying that we have interacted with 250,000 refugees and vulnerable people over the past 6 years as SolidarityNow. But our most recent endeavor is to help with the relocation of unaccompanied minors from the islands and from the Evros area in hotels in northern Greece. We are involved with 120 youths, boys mainly, in Kozani, Velvedo, and in Epirus, in Konitsa. What we learned from this is the following. First, we hope to bring reception and integration together by giving them meaning and a purpose in their lives, when we don't care if they're going, in 2 years they will be in Greece or elsewhere, because their life should continue. And the second is that we need to take into account local communities when trying to find solutions for refugees, because if we don't let them know in advance, if we don't discuss with them that there's going to be a number of children who are going to stay next to your community for a number of months, those who are good-natured and they would really want to welcome these children but are afraid due to COVID, they need to be reassured and taken into account. And the others who are very negative and would never respond positively, they take the lack of information as an excuse to endeavor into horrible negative.
Sort of say we weren't told, we weren't prepared.
Exactly. Yeah. So the point is integration. Integration is a long journey, but as every long journey, it needs a first step. And if we don't take this first step together, we shall never get there.
Yes, very well and clearly said. I'd like to go back to your experience as a Palestinian refugee. Is there one particular point in your life, aside from the kindness shown by Canada, that for you indicates this is a practice that you could expand? Is there one thing? And then I'd put the same question to Ambassador Štefánek. What are the steps that bigger authorities can take to ensure that what you've been discussing about integrating in villages and so on, that actually happens?
Yeah,
Go
one of the things I clearly remember, which builds up on the point of inclusion, is when I was a kid, I used to love when I would go to places where I'm not labeled as a refugee child, or I can just be be a regular kid. So the simple acts of inclusion will really make a refugee feel that, no, I'm part of a society. I need to contribute to the society. When you include someone in your community, then you can count on them for contributing even further to that community. And we've seen some great success stories around, as a result of that inclusion.
For example?
For example, the swimmer, the Syrian swimmer who swam across the sea but became an Olympics that on its own is a success story. And for millions of refugees, that is hope. Because today, hope is somewhat missing in that equation for a refugee. So when you bring it with these lively examples and builds up on the media's role in this, also highlighting this, not only highlighting the things that make people cry, but also the things that make people laugh and celebrate. When we've seen movies win Oscars when it comes to actually that kind of spirit, like Slumdog Millionaire, for example. For a refugee kid, that is hope. So once we add hope to the equation, with great work around as well, I think we can make a step forward, and we do need that first step.
We need that exuberance and energy that you bring to the task too.
Having me here is another example of that. If any refugees watching today, with you folks, this is also hope.
Yeah, we hear your cause. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. And I'm very happy that we have you among us and to hear your personal story. We had something similar. On 2nd of July, we were introducing a new handbook on family reunification, and we have one young lady who went through the process of reunification. Her father was in London, and she was from Iran, and they got reunited, and now she is the youth delegate to the youth Council of Europe Youth Forum. So that's also a good example, and I'm very happy that she is within the Council of Europe system. We have heard many words replicated a number of times. Integration, inclusion, children. That is the key to the problem or to the issue. There are some good examples where I've seen at the local level to provide education for children, refugee or migrant or just children. For instance, in Milan in Italy, in Bosnia, Herzegovina. I would like to also flag one project which we have within the Council of Europe, which is the European Qualifications Passport for Refugees. It's kind of, I would say, analogy or it's maybe similar to Nansen passport, which were issued by in the 20th century at the beginning. But these passports are kind of certificates which are issued by our colleagues from the Council of Europe and by the experts who consider or evaluate the qualification of refugees, either to have to be placed on the labor market or to advance with their education, so to be admitted to the higher education universities. And this is being done, and it has brought concrete results, concrete certificates, and concrete examples where refugees were admitted to the universities or could find jobs.
Yes.
Thank you.
Super examples. Yeah. The last 8 minutes go to what is being done here in Greece. And Sofia and Antigone, I know you know each other well, so perhaps you can start off with what.
Thank you.
What is your main message to people who've journeyed to Athens to find out more about this?
The issue of education is very important, especially for unaccompanied children. I mean, these children have lost about 3 to 4 years of education only because of the journey. Mm-hmm. If we add another 3 to 4 years because of war and persecution in their countries of origin, then we risk having a lost generation. And this is why we choose to give a big emphasis, and we need to give a big emphasis on education, not only on a national level, but on an EU level. Again, there needs to be a strategy of education for children that are in Europe, refugee children in Europe. What we do is we do partnerships with Greek schools, where we do programs that we call youth to youth. Every child that is with us buddies up with a student from the school, and then we do a specific curriculum with teachers from the schools. And through private donors, we have managed to do a full-time program catered only to the needs of the children we care for. This is very important because, as Antigone said, integration takes time. And for these kids to be ready to receive education, there needs to be a preparatory phase where there is language support, mental health support. There needs to be a time where they are ready to be receivers of education. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, we've seen little miracles happen. We've seen a child going to one of the best universities in Europe. We have kids that play in athletic teams, professional athletic teams like Panathinaikos, which is one of the biggest teams in Athens. We've seen kids develop their talents like drawing, others are good at, each gets the tool that they need to be able to open their wings and fly and create a future for themselves and stop being the victims and they are the creators of their future. And that's a very important transition for children and youth to stop seeing themselves as being a refugee. The moment we call a child a refugee, there's a gray curtain falling in front of their face. They start being, what you said, a human being with equal rights and equal opportunities. But we really need to make a strategy for that. And this is where political actors and institutional actors can really help us.
Thank you.
Staying on the issue of education, we are very concerned at SolidarityNow because we work on 14 camps throughout Greece and we do child protection, we interact with children, thousands of children. This year, due to COVID and due to COVID cases in the camps, and due to social distancing and irregularities at school, we have not been able to enroll them normally. So these children who went to school last year are running the risk of having another lost year education-wise in their lives. And they're starved for education, because education, what our own children hate, going to school and getting back every day, for these people it is the oxygen of life. It is their pretense of normalcy. It is their routine. It is very, very, very important.
So, I mean, obviously a very easy way to sum up this panel is to say it's education, education, education. But I think it basically is education, education, education. And we know from our own societies that the poorer people at the poorer end of those societies, that's when education is needed as well. And I think one of the main points we could perhaps take away here is the need not to treat refugee children, or indeed refugees themselves, as apart from main society. This is a societal phenomenon, unfortunately. The number of refugees and people on the move is growing. And unless we start out by recognizing that the only way to give these people a worthy existence is to integrate and to help, and not to treat them as other, only then will we actually manage to make progress. I know that this is a very sort of certain kind of policy pronouncement. I covered the refugee crisis in Europe in 2014, 15, 16. And we all know that it's real and that it shouldn't be left to one country in Europe to shoulder the burden. And we need to have more efforts such as those that have been undertaken by the Council of Europe. So, in really absolutely closing this, I want to thank you again for coming. I know that it seems a long way to travel, perhaps, in your case, a very epic journey, one more epic journey in the epic journey that is your life. But it is very important for the wider world to think about this and just stop and think for a minute or two, at least, about there but for fortune go I. So I thank you very, very much, and please keep up the good work. And I believe that we have about 3 more minutes for people to think about these themes. I really was struck by the comment that was offered that there's no one cause and therefore no one fix. And most important thing is for us to keep it broad all the time, not fixate on one particular thing. Really, the plight of refugees is so much worse if you go to places like Africa or parts of Asia. And we shouldn't necessarily have to use expertise and resources of institutions like those of the United Nations to solve a situation in Europe where there is indeed enough money and resources to go around. So thank you so much for taking part.
Thank you.
If you have one message that you'd like me to carry, I'll gladly do it. We can chat perhaps afterwards. Go ahead.
I think I love the word inclusion being repeated so many times today because, that's our first step. And, together being here is also another step. And we are increasing. And again, the root of displacement needs to also be addressed because now we have fresh issues going on, and we can tackle them early in the process before we have to be kind on the other side of the ocean or the other side of the continent.
A perfect way to sum it all up. Thank you very much. I'm told we're out of time, and we'll continue on very, very soon. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.